I am a bit worried about the War Within at this stage, though. Not because I think it's going to be bad, but I have concerns about Mists of Pandaria. And do you remember? Okay, so here's my thing, right? I've got a feeling that Mists of Pandaria and how much fun it is, I really hope the sheen, and I'm sure it will have, but I really hope the shine and the fun of Remix has worn off by the time War Within comes along. I know that the event will have finished by the time War Within comes along, but Remix has got loads of problems, but really none of those problems are consequential. Who really gives a fuck, right? There's loads of like balancing issues, and there are people that did the frog farm who are now uncatchable in terms of progress. You know, there's people getting squished with 5 billion damage every time a mob looks at them and shit like that. Yeah, whatever, man. Who gives a fuck? But you know, none of the problems with Remix are consequential in the slightest. It doesn't matter. Who gives a fuck? I think the main thing I'm worried about is the fact that, do you remember during Shadowlands, when everyone hated Shadowlands, and, you know, fair play, honestly, and everyone fucked off to go and play Final Fantasy XIV. Now, there was a lot of really good feedback that came from that. There was a lot of really, really good stuff that came out of that. There was, like, you know, a lot of feedback that came out of that has made WoW better. Genuinely. Like, one of the biggest impacts it had on WoW, everyone fucking off to play Final Fantasy XIV, was that it actually gave the devs freedom to make the game different. Like, for years, the discourse around WoW from lots of the top creators and lots of the loudest voices in the community was, do not dumb this game down. Do not make this game easier. Fuck casuals. Do not cater to casuals. This game needs to be hardcore. That might sound actually weird to hear in your brain now, but please think back to pre-Shadowlands. That is what people used to say all the time. Flying is shit. They should get rid of flying. It makes the game too easy and not social enough. They should get rid of LFR and Group Finder. It should be a constant grind for literally everything. Like, you know, that's what people were saying. That was, and anything that kind of went against that, anything that kind of catered to casuals in any way was labeled as, this is the thing that makes WoW bad. This is the thing that is wrong with WoW. This catering to casuals, this, you know, easy content. It was the accepted discourse around WoW for a decade, probably longer, you know, like from the beginning, really, right up until Shadowlands. And then everyone went to fucked off and played Final Fantasy XIV, and literally overnight, everyone changed their mind. Like, literally overnight, the creators and loud voices in the community who had gone to play Final Fantasy XIV, they were like sagely nodding and sagely going, yep, this is WoW's mistake. Doesn't cater enough to casuals. It's too complicated. It's too hard. There's too much of a grind. It's too inaccessible. And it's like, motherfucker! Come on, dudes! Come on, my boys! And please, can we remember that one of the reasons I was considered a fucking shill, and like, I quote, everything that's bad about this game, was because I dared sometimes suggest that the game could do more to cater for casuals and give people other ways of playing that wasn't hardcore top-level play. Overnight, everyone changed their mind. But I'm not complaining. I think that's a really good thing. And it gave the team, and, you know, Ian Hazzikostas has come out and said this, and so have other members of the team as well. Well, you could call it seeing the light, but none of them really admit that they felt differently before. None of them really acknowledges that they spent 15 years, like, being against everything that they then overnight decided was the thing that the game needed. And then when they did decide that's what the game needed, they all spoke about it as if they'd been saying it for years. Like I always say, this game should cater more to casual play. It's like, no, you fucking didn't. Yeah, so, I mean, it's what it is, right? Whatever. Who cares? The important thing is, the team had the opportunity to come out from that shadow and make the game that the team there actually wanted to make. And the game has been much, much better for that. And, people were like, we would like more focus on storytelling in the game and more focus on in-game cutscenes that feature your character and stuff like that. These are very, very good things that came out of BFA. These are very, very good things that came out of people trying Final Fantasy XIV and really liking Final Fantasy XIV. Huge changes that we've seen in Dragonflight that make the game much, much better. However, there was another thing as well that happened during that time. One of the things that happened was, a whole bunch of people went over to play Final Fantasy XIV. And, the only thing better than saying how brilliant Final Fantasy XIV was at the time was saying how shit WoW was and compared to it, right? And in many ways, they were right. Final Fantasy XIV does loads of stuff way better than WoW, which WoW is starting to kind of lean into a bit more now, and that's fantastic. One of those things, though, was that people were playing through MSQ, and it was like that thing of, wow, Final Fantasy XIV has so much content. So much more content than WoW. WoW's been around for longer, and WoW hasn't got anything like the amount of content that Final Fantasy XIV has got. Final Fantasy XIV has got so much content. Now, like most bullshit complaints, there is a good nuanced lesson in there. One thing that Final Fantasy XIV does do is it gives access to its old content much, much better than WoW. It utilizes a lot of its old content much, much better than WoW. But does it have more content? No. Why were people thinking it did have more content? Well, mostly because they were playing through 10 years worth of expansions all in one go. Like, they were playing through a Realm Reborn. They were playing through all the dungeons and raids in Realm Reborn. Then they were going into Heavensward. They were playing through all of the story and dungeons and raids in Heavensward. Then they went into Stormblood, and they were playing through all of the, and they were doing this within the space of a few months. And it's like, yeah, that's loads. That's 10 years worth of content. It's like, these are people who had been max level in WoW for like 15 years. So for them, new content was a new expansion. It was the opening patch of a new expansion. It was the raid in a new expansion. They, for 15 odd years, have been consuming content in WoW as it's released bit by bit. And then suddenly in 14, they had 10 years worth of content to go through at once. And they were overwhelmed and they were like, this is so much content. And I do remember mentioning a couple of times back then, I was like, you've never actually lived through a patch cadence of Final Fantasy XIV. You've never actually like played through the game as content has been releasing. You're just playing through 10 years right now. So I'm not sure that there's so much content, like observation is a particularly informed one right now. Just so you know, maybe wait till you get like into like current gameplay before you say that, right? And lo and behold, what fucking happened in Endwalker? Like one of the major points of discourse for like the last year and a half has been people going, there's just not enough content. This game is fucking dead. Like, when will you release more content, Square? What the fuck is this patch cadence? It's like, that's just the 14 patch cadence, dudes. Like, that's what it is. Like, they're not slow. You're just literally waiting for releases for the first time ever. And before that, you were playing 10 years worth of content all at once. And you know, that was one of those silly complaints comparing 14 to WoW that people had. Why have I told that entire story? Well, I'm slightly worried, that something similar is going to happen with Mists of Pandaria Remix and The War Within. Because I've played The War Within Alpha. I've done the leveling campaign in The War Within Alpha, and it's good. It's kind of short, though. And, you know, there are going to be, like, I think there's a big emphasis on side quests. My feeling is that they get you through the story campaign as quickly as possible, because that's what gets you to each zone. And my feeling is, because the zones, a couple of them are kind of claustrophobic, the the Ringing Deeps is kind of claustrophobic. It's kind of like Zaralek, and there's some even more enclosed spaces in there than that. And Azkajet is a very underground zone. And I think they're scared that if they make people stay leveling in a zone for an extended amount of time, it will be like the underwater zone in Kata, where people are like, fuck this. The leveling campaign in Vashia was about 3 times the length than it should have been, which was the worst fucking call ever. They had a zone which people weren't going to be super happy about anyway, and then there's like 3 points in the Vashia storyline where you think it's finishing, and it doesn't. You know? And it's just too long. And one of the reasons Vashir is so badly remembered, one of the reasons people hate it so much, is because it's that combination of an underwater zone, and it was a very long part of the campaign as well. And I think they've got that in their mind with these zones. I think it's like, I feel like they're like, let's get people through these zones as quickly as possible, open up world quests and endgame content. We can still put loads of story in there afterwards, you know, like half of the entire campaign is max level. You know, there are, I don't know if there's many quests, but there's as many chapters of endgame story campaign as there are leveling campaign chapters. So that suggests that like 50% of the actual main campaign story is endgame once you've been through all of the zones, and then you've got all the side quests and other things that are in there as well. And I've got a feeling, you know, so much of those zones is completely empty at the moment that I've got a feeling there'll be lots of them. But I think they're trying to get you through those zones as quickly as possible, so that it's like you're not stuck in the Ringing Deeps for very long. And if you don't like it, you can basically avoid it after that. You're not stuck in Azkajet very long. If you don't like it, you can fuck off. You know? And I think that's probably quite wise. But what it does do is it makes the story campaign of War Within seem quite short. And with the best will in the world, this is the opening patch of an expansion. So it is only the leveling campaign and the initial endgame campaign. It is just one raid. It is just 8 dungeons, 4 of the new dungeons in the Mythic Plus in the Mythic Plus season, right? And with the best will in the world, my worry is that coming off the back of playing through the whole of the Mists of Pandaria expansion and everything in it, so the entire leveling campaign, which was longer anyway, Landfall, Isle of Thunder, like everything else, all the different reputations, all the different rewards, every single dungeon, every single raid, and there's like 50 raids in Mists of Pandaria as well. My worry is that it's going to be that same feeling that people got when they were playing Final Fantasy XIV. They had like, you know, 10 years of content to play through, and it was like, wow, compared to WoW, this is amazing. WoW has got no content compared to this. My worry is that it's going to be the same effect, is that you play through 2 years worth of content in 3 months, where it's all available all the time, right from the start, and then you go into an actual new expansion with an actual expansion's, you know, release cadence, where you haven't got it all right at the very beginning, and actually you're spending 5 months with like a fraction of the content that you've just had in Mists of Pandaria Remix. My worry is that that's going to have a negative effect on people's reactions to the War Within. They've just come from Remix, where they have an entire expansion, a fucking brilliant expansion as well, they've been to play all of in 3 months at their own pace, like a fucking smorgasbord. They've gone from a smorgasbord, they've gone from an all-you-can-eat buffet to a standard meal where they bring it out 1 course at a time. Can anyone appreciate that fear? Am I just being stupid? Is that, am I being dumb? Like, am I completely wrong to think that might happen? Okay, people, unfortunately, absolutely. I was kind of hoping all of you would say that I'm stupid, honestly.